So welcome back, guys, to another Access Talking, and this is something I've been wanting to do since I started YouTube, and this really shows why it's kind of nice I opened up another channel, because this is something I felt like I definitely couldn't talk about on my main channel, my gaming channel, because this has nothing to do with video games. I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite bands. Now, I'm going to be kind of sticking to, the rock genre, because I do listen to all sorts of music, and I normally don't like the quote that when people say, oh, I listen to a little bit of everything, because 9 times out of 10 when I meet those kind of people, they listen to the mainstream radio on speed dial. They don't really listen to everything. I feel like it's impossible to listen to everything because there's so much music out there. And as a musician, I definitely say you definitely benefit as an artist to listen to everything. Like, if you play heavy metal, don't just listen to heavy metal. Listen to other kinds of genres like jazz, listen to blues, listen to classical music, listen to rap, listen to pop music. A little bit of everything can definitely help your influence and create something unique and on your own. I always say when I play music, and then being a musician, I'm like a sponge, and I just soak up different influences and make something. So that's definitely some of my little bit of musician advice I would tell you guys. But I'm not going to do this like a countdown, and the bands that I do mention, I'll have a link on the description below so you can check out their music. Anywho, the first 2 bands I want to talk about that are probably the biggest influence in my bass playing would actually be Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden. Now, I don't feel like they need any sort of introduction. They are very popular, and I feel like everyone at some point has heard a Black Sabbath song, have heard an Iron Maiden song. But when I was first learning how to play bass, I had no idea what this instrument had to offer. I didn't even know too much about it. I was very green about it. But Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath taught me that the bass is not just the shadow of the guitar, that the bass is right there with the drums. It's the root of the main melody, and it makes the song what it is. And it taught me the importance of playing bass. And also with Geezer Butler and Steve Harris, they are also phenomenal songwriters. And it taught me that I didn't have to write songs that had to do with myself, like biographical songs. I could write stuff about stories like Iron Maiden does. They focus a lot on literature, and Black Sabbath they used to focus a lot on current events in the 70s, but they would mix occult themes and stuff like that just to be edgy. So that was a big influence of mine. And of course, when I talk about stories, I have to talk about concept albums. And I can't mention concept albums without mentioning King Diamond / Mercyful Fate. Now, King Diamond mostly did the concept albums, but I was introduced to them around the same time. And I do have to admit, when I first heard King Diamond, I didn't know what to think of it. There was a record store that was going out of business in town, and I went in there like towards the last day, and I bought 2 albums. I bought the Abigail album and Fatal Portrait. And you look at King Diamond and you expect one thing, and you listen to it and it's totally different. I was just kind of like, what the hell did I get myself into? And I almost felt like at first I wasted my money. I was like, I don't know about this, but it grew on me. And when it grew on me, it really grew on me. And I started reading the lyrics. I really liked the way he wrote his stuff. It was so narrative and so descriptive, and the music was just so on point, and the vocal style really broadened my horizons, and I love his falsetto vocals. So King Diamond and Mercyful Fate, definitely. Oh man, I recommend albums like Abigail, Fatal Portrait, Puppet Master, Conspiracy, Them. Oh my gosh. And of course, Mercyful Fate. My favorite album by them, of course, is Don't Break the Oath, followed by Melissa. Those are like my 2. I feel like those are the 2 Mercyful Fate albums that you definitely need in your metal collection. Now, some other bands I like Misfits. I know they're not really metal. They're more punk, but I found the Misfits at a certain point in my life that was very life-changing. I started, talking to my friend Mikey, and he was more the punk guy. Like, he listened to NoFX and Pennywise and Bad Religion, Anti-Nowhere League. He listened to a lot of that stuff, and the only punk that I really listened to at the time was, Bad Religion and Ramones. That was about it. You know, I had nothing against punk music. I was just very naive, and I didn't really know that much about it. But we found the Misfits. He introduced me to the Misfits, and I'd already heard about the Misfits, but I never actually listened to them. But that was like the band that really made us come together and start writing our own music. So the Misfits are very important. I love all eras of Misfits except for Jerry Only's. I'm not a big fan of Jerry Only Misfits, but you know, I actually got to meet Michael Graves twice. My band opened for him, and he's a really awesome guy. And of course, Danzig's just iconic. So it taught me that, you know, punk music can have that fantasy theme, that horror theme that I loved about Merciful Fate and King Diamond, but it can be a little more simpler and be more catchy and better for a young musician like myself. So that's one of the reasons why I love Misfits. Now I'm gonna go overseas and talk about some of my favorite bands that are not, you know, American or European based, and talk about some of my favorite Japanese bands. I mean, back in 2005 when U2 first launched, the first stuff I started looking at was bands from around the world. That's always really intrigued me, and that's when I found X Japan. X Japan is probably one of my favorite bands of all time because it mixed two genres, or mixed many genres I really like. It took, you know, the classical music, which I grew up on. I love classical music. It took the heavy metal that I loved about Iron Maiden and some symphonic power metal bands like Stratovarius and Sonata Arctica and Hammerfall. It took some of those elements I really enjoyed, and then it also it introduced me to Visual Kei, you know, the genre that's very androgynous, very fashionable, very entertaining, you know. And when I saw, you know, this band that was so flamboyant on stage and had such a look to them, it made me think of like David Bowie, made me think of like New York Dolls and like 80s bands like Motley Crue and stuff like that. And man, it just really made an impact on me, and it influenced me to play more piano because that's what I grew up playing. That was my first instrument, was the piano. And then, you know, I was just kind of like, oh, the piano is not really something that, or keyboard is not something you really want to play in a band. You want to play like guitar. And then my dad got me playing bass, and that could be a whole nother video about how I got introduced to playing bass. And yeah, I love Taiji, rest in peace, Taiji, the bassist from X Japan in the early years before Heath replaced him. He did things on bass I had never seen before. He was doing like the finger taps and the slaps, and he had the crazy pedals, but it was still bass. And I was like, oh man, that's the kind of bassist I want to be when I watched him on stage in those videos. And I remember when I would download music, you know, from LimeWire, X Japan was one of those bands that I would download because I couldn't really get the albums online because I was too young. And I didn't have a bank account, so I couldn't go on eBay, and plus the albums were just so ridiculously expensive on eBay. I think since the band got back together in 2008, I think maybe they've done reprints of their albums, and the prices have really dropped. But I remember seeing like Silent Jealousy for like $60. And, you know, for like a kid like myself who's like 15 or 16 years old, $50 is a lot of money. So I had to download it, and I enjoyed it. And one time I had my CD player that I took with me everywhere, and it ended up getting stolen, and I had my X Japan mix CD in there, and I was so upset about it. But, you know, after finding X Japan, I started listening to other Visual Kei bands like Malice Miser, Moi Dis Moi, Versailles, Nightmare, and I just love that genre. I love Visual Kei. It's really cool. And one more band I wanted to mention, and this is kind of related to the Misfits because I found this band through listening to the Misfits, and that's Balzac. Now, don't laugh at their name. I know every time I mention Balzac, someone's like, Balzac. But no, it's actually named after a French writer. And they're a Japanese band. They're horror punk, but they do a little bit more metal. They've always kind of gradually changed, but they've always had that Balzac sound to them. You know, it's just this distinctive sound that you listen to, and you're like, man, this sounds like Balzac. But one of the things I loved about Balzac is they kind of made me think of it kind of made me think of Kiss with their marketing. It wasn't as like sleazy as Kiss, you know, they don't make, you know, Balzac condoms or anything like that, but you know, they really treated their fans like a little, like a fan club, in the sense that you would go to their shows in like Osaka, and they would have like cassette tapes of like early demos or certain recordings that weren't going to come out months later, and they would give out those cassette tapes, and only the people that came to that concert would get that cassette tape, so then it would be like highly collectible. They came out with different toys and stuff like that, and that really attracted me to Balzac. I felt like whenever you had a Balzac album, it was something kind of special, and I found them through the Misfits Project 1950, which was a 50s covers album. It was horrible, but it did come with a DVD, and it was showcasing Misfit records and the artists that were being shown, and one of the bands on there was Balzac. So I can honestly say that one of the best things that came out of Project 1950 from the Misfits wasn't Jerry Only singing Great Balls of Fire, but it was being introduced to Balzac. Man, I definitely going to have some of these bands as a description below so you guys can listen to them. I highly encourage you guys in case you haven't heard them yet. But yeah, that's a little bit of my music talk. I don't want to ramble too much, but I might make this like a multi-series and talk about other genres that I listen to, not just, you know, heavy metal and rock. I listen to all sorts of stuff. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, talk to you soon.